My name is Jake Morrison, and this is how I discovered that everything about Diane was a lie. My mother died on a Tuesday. 3 weeks later, my stepmother tried to steal the only thing Mom left me, a cabin. Just a small A-frame in the Colorado mountains, but it was mine. Mom had promised me. "The cabin is yours, Jake," she'd whispered before she died. "Don't let anyone take it." I promised her I wouldn't. Then Diane showed up with a deed saying the cabin belonged to her. I was sitting in a lawyer's office in Denver when I first saw the document. "Your stepmother claims your father gave her the cabin before he died," the lawyer said. "She has a deed, signed by both your parents." That's impossible. But there it was. A legal document with my parents' signatures, dated March 2019, transferring ownership of the cabin from my mother to Diane Morrison. "This is a forgery," I said. "Can you prove it?" That was the problem. I couldn't. Not yet. My mother had been sick in March 2019, barely able to hold a pen. There's no way she understood what she was signing if she signed it at all. But proving forgery takes time. Money, expert witnesses, and Diane knew that. I'd never trusted Diane. My father married her 18 months after my mother's cancer diagnosis. Too fast, too convenient. Diane was 52, overdressed, too friendly. She said she was a widow. Her husband had died in a car accident, she said. She had no family, no children, just her and her memories. My father, grieving and lonely, fell for every word. They married 6 months after my mom died. I was against it, told Dad it was too soon. But he was desperate for companionship, and Diane was there, ready to fill the void. Now I understood why. She wasn't looking for love, she was looking for assets. And my father had plenty: a paid-off house in Boulder, retirement savings, investments, and a wife dying of cancer who owned a valuable piece of Colorado mountain property. Diane had played the long game, gotten close to Dad, convinced him to help my mother with paperwork while she was sick, and somehow gotten that cabin transferred into her name. Now that both my parents were dead, she was ready to cash in. Over my dead body, I called Diane the day after meeting with the lawyer. "We need to talk about the cabin," I said. "There's nothing to talk about, Jake. The property is mine. Your father gave it to me as a gift. I have the deed. That deed is a forgery and you know it. Be careful with accusations like that. I could sue you for slander. Go ahead. Because I'm going to prove that document is fake, and then I'm going to make sure you pay for fraud." There was a long pause. Then Diane's voice changed, harder, colder. "Jake, you're upset about your mother. I understand. But this is business. The cabin is mine. If you want to keep pretending otherwise, hire a lawyer. But I promise you, you'll lose." "We'll see." I hung up. I needed proof that the deed was forged, and I had an idea where to find it. The cabin. Mom had kept everything important there. Old family documents, photos, letters. She'd always said the cabin was her safe place, where she kept the things that mattered most. If there was evidence that she never intended to give the cabin to Diane, it would be there. I just had to get there before Diane did. I loaded up my truck early on a Friday morning in mid-May. Sleeping bag, supplies, my laptop, a portable scanner. I'd spend the weekend at the cabin searching for anything that could prove my case. The drive from Denver to Breckenridge usually takes 90 minutes. I made it in 70. The cabin was at the end of a winding dirt road, surrounded by pine trees, with a view of the mountains that took your breath away. It looked exactly as I remembered: weathered wood, stone chimney, the porch where Mom used to sit with her morning coffee. I parked and grabbed my bags. The key was hidden under a rock by the steps, right where it had always been. Inside, everything was dusty but unchanged. The furniture Mom had chosen, the books she'd loved, her presence everywhere. I felt tears sting my eyes. God, I missed her. But I didn't have time for grief. I had work to do. I started in the bedroom, going through the closet where Mom kept boxes of old documents, tax returns, medical records, property documents from when she'd inherited the cabin from my grandparents. I found the original deed from 1998, clear as day. The cabin transferred from Robert and Susan Bennett, my grandparents, to Sarah Morrison, my mother. No mention of my father. This was Mom's property, inherited through her family. I photographed it with my phone. Then I found something else, a folder labeled "Important Jake." Inside were letters. Letters from my mother to me, written during her final months. "Dear Jake, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry I couldn't fight harder. I'm sorry I'm leaving you alone. But you're not alone, you have the cabin. It's Yours. I've made sure of it. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Love, Mom. Another letter dated a month before she died. Jake, I'm worried about Diane. She keeps asking about the cabin, about property values, about my will. Your father thinks I'm being paranoid, but something feels wrong. I've hidden copies of all important documents in the cabin in the place we used to hide your birthday presents. Remember? You'll know where to look. These documents prove the cabin is yours. Don't let her take it. Mom, the place we used to hide birthday presents. The loose floorboard under the rug in the living room. I ran downstairs and rolled back the old braided rug. There, the board that was slightly different from the others. I pried it up with a kitchen knife. Underneath was a metal lockbox. Locked. But I knew Mom. I knew how she thought. Her anniversary with Dad, the combination would be their anniversary. I tried it. The box opened. Inside, copies of the deed showing Mom's soul. Ownership. A letter from Mom to her lawyer stating her wishes that the cabin go to me upon her death. Photos of Diane at our house, with dates written on the back showing Diane was around much earlier than she'd claimed. And something else. Something that made my blood run cold. A private investigator's report on Diane Carter. Diane's maiden name. Mom had hired a PI. The report was damning. Diane Carter had a criminal record: fraud, identity theft, check kiting. She'd been arrested 3 times, served 2 years in prison in the 1,990 seconds. She'd also been married before, not widowed, married, to a man named Frank Carter, and according to the report, Frank Carter wasn't dead. He was alive and well, living in Arizona as of 2 years ago, which meant Diane's marriage to my father was invalid, which meant she was a bigamist, which meant she had no legal claim to anything of my father's, including the cabin. I was reading through the report, my hands shaking, when I heard a car pull up outside. I looked out the window. Diane's silver Lexus. Shit. I heard Diane's footsteps on the porch. I quickly shoved the documents back in the lockbox, closed it, and slid it under the couch. The door opened. Jake? I saw your truck. We need to talk. She walked in, looking around like she owned the place. Which, legally, she thought she did. How did you know I was here? I asked. I had a feeling you'd come looking for something to use against me. I'm not stupid, Jake. I know what you're trying to do. I'm trying to get back what's mine. It's not yours. It's mine. Your father gave it to me. Did he? Or did you forge his signature while he was grieving? Diane's eyes flashed. Be very careful what you accuse me of. I'm past being careful. I know about your criminal record, Diane. The fraud. The identity theft. I know you've done this before. Her expression changed. Just for a second, the mask slipped, and I saw something cold and calculating underneath. You don't know anything, she said quietly. I know enough. And I'm going to prove that deed is fake. Good luck with that. Because I'm not leaving until this is settled. If you're staying here, so am I. I'm not letting you destroy evidence or plant anything that helps your case. You can't just, I can. This is my property. You're the one trespassing. We stared at each other. This was insane. We were going to be stuck here together? Then I heard it. A sound outside. Wind. But not normal wind, the howling, aggressive wind of a mountain storm. I looked out the window. Dark clouds were rolling in fast. Snow was starting to fall. Is that snow? Diane said. It's May. This is 10,000 feet. It snows in May. Sometimes June. The snow was falling harder now. Within minutes, visibility dropped to almost nothing. I checked my phone. No signal there never was at the cabin, and the storm was getting worse. We need to leave, Diane said. Now, before the road becomes impassable. Too late. Look. Through the window, we could barely see our vehicles. They were already covered in snow. The road would be buried by now. How long will this last? Diane asked, fear creeping into her voice. Could be an hour, could be 2 days. Mountain storms are unpredictable. 2 days? I can't be stuck here with you for 2 days. The feeling is mutual. But we don't have a choice. We were trapped. Together. In a cabin with no phone signal, limited supplies, and a storm that showed no signs of stopping. And somewhere under the couch was evidence that could destroy Diane's entire life. This was going to be a long weekend. By evening, there was 3 feet of snow outside, and it was still falling. Diane and I had established an uneasy truce. She stayed in the bedroom. I stayed in the living room. We avoided each other except when necessary. I'd managed to hide the lockbox in the bedroom closet, behind some old boxes, while Diane was in the bathroom, Not a great hiding place, but better than under. Out the couch. I made dinner, canned soup, and crackers from the cabin's emergency supplies. Diane ate in silence, glaring at me across the table. "This is ridiculous," she finally said. "We're adults. We should be able to have a civilized conversation." "Fine, let's talk. Why did you forge that deed?" "I didn't forge anything. Your father gave me that cabin. My mother would never have agreed to that. Your mother was dying. She wasn't thinking clearly. Your father made the decision. Then why not just inherit it through his estate? Why go through the trouble of transferring it before he died?" Diane hesitated. Just a fraction of a second. But I saw it. "Tax purposes," she said. "It was cleaner to transfer it while both your parents were alive." "That's a lie. Believe what you want, Jake. But the law is on my side." We ate the rest of the meal in hostile silence. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay on the couch, listening to the wind howl and the cabin creak. The fire in the fireplace was dying down, casting dancing shadows on the walls. I kept thinking about that PI report. Diane's criminal past. Her dead husband who wasn't actually dead. If Frank Carter was alive, and Diane had married my father without divorcing Frank, then she'd committed bigamy. A felony in Colorado, which meant her marriage to my father was void, which meant she had no spousal rights to anything, which meant the cabin was definitely mine. I just had to prove Frank Carter was alive. But how? I was trapped in a cabin with no internet, no phone signal, no way to contact anyone. I'd have to wait out the storm, then get to town, hire a real lawyer, and I heard something. A sound outside, not wind, not snow falling from trees, footsteps on the porch. I sat up, my heart pounding. Someone was outside, in the middle of a blizzard, at a remote cabin miles from anywhere. The doorknob turned. I grabbed the poker from the fireplace and moved toward the door. It opened. A man stood there, covered in snow, shivering violently, his face hidden by a hood and scarf. "Please," he said, his voice shaking. "I need help. My car went off the road. I've been walking for hours. Please let me in before I freeze to death." I hesitated. This could be a trick. But leaving someone to die in a blizzard wasn't an option. "Come in," I said, quickly. The man stumbled inside. I closed the door behind him, shutting out the howling wind and driving snow. He pulled back his hood and unwrapped his scarf. And I found myself staring at a man in his 60s, with weathered features and cold eyes. "Thank you," he said. "I thought I was going to die out there." From the bedroom, I heard Diane's door open. She walked out, saw the stranger, and froze. Her face went completely white. "Frank?" she whispered. The man smiled a cold, knowing smile. "Hello, Diane. Long time no see." Diane's hand went to her throat. "You're supposed to be dead." "Yeah, well, rumors of my death were greatly exaggerated. You should know you're the one who spread them." I looked between them, my mind racing. "Wait," I said. "You're Frank Carter? Diane's supposedly dead husband?" "In the flesh," Frank said. "Though Diane's been telling people I died years ago. Convenient for her, pretending to be a widow so she could marry rich old men and steal their money." Diane's expression hardened. "Get out. Can't. Storm. Unless you want to send me back out to freeze to death. Though I suppose you'd like that one less person who knows the truth about you." "What truth?" I asked. Frank looked at me with interest. "And who are you?" "Jake Morrison. My father married Diane 3 years ago." "Ah, the latest victim. How much did she take him for?" "Shut up, Frank," Diane said. But Frank was warming up now, literally and figuratively. He moved closer to the fire, rubbing his hands together. "Let me guess," he said to me. "Your father died, and now Diane's claiming ownership of property that was never hers?" Classic. Diane. She did the same thing to the last 2 guys. "Last 2 guys? You didn't know? Your father wasn't her first, or even her second. Diane's been running this scam for 20 years. Find a lonely older man, preferably widowed or divorced. Marry him illegally, since we never divorced. Get access to his assets. Then wait for him to die or help speed things along." "That's a lie," Diane said, but her voice was shaking. "Is it? What about Bernard Hutchins? Married you in 2009, dead by 2011. Heart attack, they said. And Richard Coleman? Married you in 2015, fell down the stairs in 2017. Both left you everything in their wills you probably forged, knowing you." I stared at Diane. "You've done this before? Don't listen to him, Jake. Frank is a criminal. He's trying to manipulate you." I'm a criminal? Frank laughed. That's rich, coming from you. We were partners, Diane. We ran scams together for 15 years. Then you decided you wanted to go solo, faked my death, and left me with nothing while you moved on to bigger scores. If you're not dead, why did you let everyone think you were? I asked. Because Diane threatened to turn me in for our old crimes if I didn't disappear. She had evidence records, files, enough to put me away for 20 years. So I took the deal, changed my identity, moved to Arizona, stayed quiet. But I kept tabs on her, followed her career, if you want to call it that. Then why are you here now? Frank's smile turned predatory. Because Diane's been holding out on me. She's pulled off, 3 or 4 scores since we split up? Millions of dollars, and she's kept every penny. I figure she owes me. I don't owe you anything, Diane said. Sure you do. Partners split 50-50. That was always the deal. We're not partners anymore. Then maybe I should tell Jake here about all the crimes we committed together. About the fraud, the forgeries, the elderly man in Phoenix whose death might not have been as natural as it seemed. Shut up. Diane lunged at Frank, but I stepped between them. Everyone calm down, I said. Diane, is what he's saying true? Have you done this before? She didn't answer. Didn't need to. Her silence said everything. Oh my God, I said. My father. Did you? Your father had a heart attack, Diane said quickly. Natural causes? I didn't touch him. But you would have, Frank said. Eventually, when the time was right, when you drained enough assets and needed to move on to the next mark, I felt sick. My father had died 2 years ago. Sudden heart attack. The doctors had said it was stress, his age, genetics. But what if it wasn't? What if Diane had killed him? We sat around the fire, a bizarre, tense triangle. Me, my father's bigamous wife, and her supposedly dead husband who'd shown up in the middle of a blizzard. Start from the beginning, I said. I want to know everything. Frank looked at Diane. Should I? Or will you? Go to hell, Diane said. I'll take that as my cue. Frank settled into the chair, enjoying his audience. Diane and I met in 1995. We were both running small-time scams. Bad checks, credit card fraud, nothing major. We decided to team up, pool our talents. For years, we worked together. We'd target vulnerable people, usually elderly, usually wealthy. I'd do the groundwork, identify marks, create fake identities. Diane would do the relationship work, seduce them, marry them, get access to their assets. And then, I asked, and then we'd wait. Sometimes they'd die naturally and leave everything to Diane. Sometimes we'd help nature along. A little poison in the medication. Too much blood thinner. An accident on the stairs. Nothing too obvious. You murdered people. Diane murdered people, Frank corrected. I just helped plan it and cover it up. There's a difference. Not legally, I said. Maybe not. But morally, I never actually killed anyone. That was all Diane. Diane finally spoke. You're just as guilty. As I am. You were there. You helped. Don't pretend you have clean hands. Never said I did. But at least I'm honest about what I am. You're the one playing victim, pretending to be a grieving widow, making people feel sorry for you. I tried to process what I was hearing. How many people have you killed? I haven't killed anyone, Diane insisted. She's killed at least 4 that I know of, Frank said. Bernard, Richard, maybe 1 or 2 before I met her. And she would have killed your father eventually if his heart hadn't given out first. Why? I asked. Why do this? Why not just get a job, live a normal life? Diane laughed a bitter, ugly sound. A normal life? Working minimum wage, struggling to pay rent, watching other people live in luxury while I barely survive? No thanks. I decided a long time ago that I deserved better. And if men were stupid enough to be tricked by a pretty face and a sad story, that was their problem. They trusted you. That's what made it easy. The coldness in her voice was chilling. This wasn't a person. This was a predator. So, what's your plan now? I asked Frank. You show up here in the middle of a storm that wasn't an accident, was it? Frank smiled. No, I've been tracking Diane for months. Knew about her marriage to your father, knew about his death, knew she'd gotten property out of it. I figured it was time to collect my share. I don't have any money to give you, Diane said. Liar. You got a house in Boulder, retirement accounts, life insurance, and this cabin. You're sitting on at least $2 million in assets. I want half. And if I don't give it to you, then I go to the police and tell them everything. About our past crimes, about the murders, about the bigamy, about the forged deeds and wills. You'll spend the rest of your life in prison. If I go down, you go down with me. You're just as guilty. Maybe, but I'm willing to take that risk if you don't pay up. Are you? They stared at each. Other two criminals, two partners in crime, now enemies. And I was stuck in the middle. I excused myself to the bathroom, my head spinning. Diane was a serial killer. Frank was her accomplice. My father might have been murdered, or at least marked for murder, before he died naturally. And I was trapped in a cabin with both of them, miles from help, in the middle of a blizzard. I had to document this, record everything, get evidence that could put them both away. My phone. I had my phone. No signal, but it could still record audio and video. I set it up in the living room, hidden on a bookshelf between books, lens pointing toward the fire where Diane and Frank were sitting. Then I hit record and went back out. Okay, I said. Let's figure this out. Frank, you want money from Diane? Diane, you want Frank to disappear again? What if we make a deal? They both looked at me suspiciously. What kind of deal? Frank asked. Diane pays you some money, a fair amount, not half, and you sign documents disclaiming any spousal rights to my father's estate. That way, Diane keeps most of what she has, you get something, and you both go your separate ways. Why would you help Diane? Frank asked. She stole from your father. Because if you two are busy fighting each other, nobody benefits. But if we settle this, I can focus on proving that cabin deed is forged, and getting what's rightfully mine. It was a lie, of course. I wasn't going to let Diane keep anything, but I needed them talking, confessing, giving me evidence I could use. How much? Diane asked. 200,000, Frank said. Cash, transferred to an account I specify. That's robbery. That's business. Take it or leave it. Diane thought about it. Fine. But you have to sign a legal document saying we're divorced, that you have no claim to anything from my marriage to Jake's father, and that you'll never contact me again. Deal. But I want the money first. You'll get it when the storm clears and you can access my accounts. How do I know you won't just run? You don't. But what choice do you have? They continued negotiating and I let them talk, making sure my phone was capturing everything. Frank detailed their past crimes, names, dates, methods. Diane defended herself half-heartedly, but she didn't deny any of it. I had them. Everything I needed to put them both away. Now I just had to survive until the storm cleared. We made it through that night without killing each other, though it was close several times. The next morning, the snow had stopped, but we were buried. 5 feet of snow outside. The road would be impassable for days until the plows came through. We were still trapped. Frank and Diane continued their uneasy negotiation. I played mediator, all while my phone recorded every word. They talked about Bernard Hutchins, how Diane had crushed up Ambien in his nightly whiskey until he was so disoriented he fell down the stairs. They talked about Richard Coleman, how Diane had gradually increased his blood pressure medication until he had a massive stroke. They talked about others I didn't know about, people whose deaths were never investigated, never questioned. And they talked about my father. I didn't kill Michael, Diane insisted. His heart gave out naturally. But you were planning to, Frank said. Don't lie. You'd already started researching cardiac medications, ways to induce heart attacks. Research isn't murder. Not yet. But it would have been eventually. I wanted to lunge across the room and strangle Diane. This monster had married my father, pretended to love him, all while planning how to kill him and take his money. But I stayed calm, kept recording, let them talk. On the second night, Frank made a mistake. He'd been drinking, we'd found a bottle of whiskey in the cabin, and Frank had been steadily working through it. Diane and I were nursing single glasses, but Frank was on his 5th or 6th. You know what's funny? Frank said, his words slurring slightly. Jake here thinks his mother's death was natural too. I froze. What? Frank, shut up, Diane said. Why? He should know. He deserves to know what you really are. What are you talking about? I asked. Frank leaned forward. Your mother had cancer, right? Stage 4? Given 6 months to live? Yes. And she lasted 8 months. Pretty good, considering. What's your point? My point is, she could have lasted longer. A lot longer. With the right treatment, the right care. But Diane made sure she didn't. The room went silent. You're lying, I said, but my voice was shaking. Am I? asked Diane. Ask her about the medication switches. Ask her about the appointments that were mysteriously canceled. Ask her about the nutritional supplements that were actually making your mother sicker. I turned to Diane. Is that true? Don't listen to him. He's drunk and he's lying. Diane was in a hurry, Frank continued. She'd already hooked your father, but your mother was in the way. The longer your mother lived, the longer Diane had to wait to marry him. So she helped speed things up. You murdered my mother? My voice was barely a whisper. I didn't murder anyone. Your mother was dying anyway. Cancer killed her, not me. But you made sure it killed her faster. Diane didn't answer. And in that silence, I knew it was true. Diane hadn't just married my father for his money. She'd murdered my mother to get him. Something inside me snapped. I lunged at Diane, my hands reaching for her throat. She screamed. Frank jumped up, trying to pull me off. We crashed into the coffee table, sending glasses flying. I was stronger than Diane, fueled by rage and grief, but Frank was bigger than both of us. He yanked me back, throwing me against the wall. Kid, I get it, Frank said, but killing her isn't going to help. You want justice? Real justice? Then we let the law handle her. She murdered my mother. I know, and she'll pay for it, but not like this. I slumped against the wall, breathing hard, tears streaming down my face. My mother, my sweet, kind mother who'd fought so hard to stay alive, who'd wanted just a little more time with me, and Diane had taken that from her. The third day dawned clear and bright. The storm had passed. Frank and Diane were both exhausted, wary of each other and of me. I'd barely slept, my mind racing with rage and grief and plans. The road should be plowed by this afternoon, I said. We can leave then. Good, Diane said. I'm done with this place. Before we go, we need to finalize our agreement, Frank said. Diane, you'll transfer the money to me. I'll sign the divorce papers and disappear. Fine, but I need to get to a computer. I can't do bank transfers from here. We'll go into town together. Make sure everything's handled. They continued discussing logistics, unaware that I'd already made my decision. I wasn't letting either of them leave this mountain as free people. Around 2 p.m., we heard the sound of a snowplow rumbling up the road. The county had cleared the main highway and was now working on the smaller roads. We'd be able to drive out within a few hours. I'm gonna pack up, I said. Diane, can you help me carry some boxes to my truck? She looked suspicious but agreed. Probably wanted to make sure I wasn't stealing anything she considered hers. We went out to the truck together. The snow was still deep, but my truck had 4-wheel drive. I could make it out. Jake, Diane said as I loaded a box into the truck bed. I know you're angry, I understand. But what Frank said about your mother, he was lying. Trying to turn you against me. Was he? Yes, your mother died of cancer, that's all. I cared about her. I cared about your father. I'm not a monster. I looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw absolutely no remorse. No guilt. No humanity. You're right about one thing, I said. You're not a monster. Monsters are fictional. You're just evil? Her expression hardened. Believe what you want, but you can't prove anything. Actually, I can. I pulled out my phone and pressed play. Her voice came through the speaker clear as day. I didn't kill anyone. Your mother was dying anyway. Cancer killed her, not me. Diane's face went white. You recorded us? Every word, every confession, every detail about Bernard, Richard, all of them. 3 days of recordings. Diane, you and Frank talked about everything. The murders, the fraud, the bigamy, all of it. And I have proof. You had no right, I had every right. This is my property. And in Colorado, I only need one-party consent to record a conversation that I'm part of. Everything you and Frank said is admissible in court. Diane lunged for my phone, but I was faster. I'd already backed up the recordings to the cloud that morning when the internet came back. Even if you destroy my phone, it's too late. The files are uploaded, backed up, saved. Diane stared at me, calculating. Then she turned and ran, not toward the cabin, toward the woods. She was going to run, disappear into the forest, try to get away. But where would she go? We were miles from anywhere. The snow was chest deep in places, and she was 55 years old in designer boots. She made it maybe 100 yards before she sank into a snowdrift and couldn't get out. I walked over calmly. You can't run, Diane. There's nowhere to go. Please, she said, and for the first time she sounded genuinely afraid. Jake, please. We can work this out. I'll give you the cabin. I'll give you everything. Just don't turn me in. Give me what's already mine? How generous. I'm begging you, I'll disappear. You'll never see me again. Like you disappeared after killing Bernard? After killing Richard? After murdering my mother? No. This ends now. I pulled her out of the snow and walked her back to the cabin, where Frank was waiting. Time to call the police, I said. The Summit County Sheriff arrived an hour later, along with 2 deputies. I'd explained the situation over the phone, that I had evidence of multiple murders, fraud, and bigamy. That both suspects were at the cabin. Sheriff Martinez took my statement while deputies secured Diane and Frank in separate vehicles. You recorded all of this? Martinez asked, listening to portions of the audio on my phone. 3 days worth. They confessed to everything: murders, fraud, identity theft, bigamy. It's all there. This is pretty extraordinary, Mr. Morrison. But you understand this is going to trigger a massive investigation? Multiple jurisdictions. Probably federal involvement given the fraud and bigamy across state lines. I understand. I just want justice for my mother. And for all the other people they hurt. Martinez nodded slowly. We'll need you to come to the station and give a full statement. And we'll need to verify all these recordings, get them properly logged as evidence. This is going to take time. I've got time. The case took 8 months to build. Federal investigators got involved. They exhumed bodies of Diane's previous husbands. They found evidence of poisoning in Bernard Hutchins and Richard Coleman. They investigated my mother's death. While they couldn't definitively prove Diane had hastened her death, they found evidence that Diane had interfered with her medical care, canceled appointments, switched medications, isolated her from friends who might have advocated for better treatment. They also discovered that Diane's marriage to my father was indeed invalid. She'd never divorced Frank, making her a bigamist, which meant she had no legal claim to any of my father's estate. The cabin was legally mine. The deed Diane had produced was a forgery. My mother's signature had been forged, while Mom was too sick to know what she was signing. Frank Carter cut a deal testimony against Diane in exchange for a reduced sentence. He pled guilty to conspiracy, fraud, and accessory to murder. 20 years with possibility of parole in 15. Diane refused to plead. She went to trial, maintaining her innocence despite overwhelming evidence. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. 3 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of attempted murder, fraud, bigamy, forgery, and more. Life in prison without parole. As they led her away, Diane looked at me one last time. You destroyed my life. No, I said. You destroyed your own life, and you destroyed other people's lives. I just made sure you paid for it. The legal aftermath was complicated. Because the cabin had been purchased with money from Diane and Frank's early scams, money stolen from their victims, the court ordered that the property be sold. The proceeds would go to a victims' compensation fund, to be distributed among the families of people Diane and Frank had defrauded over the years. I got my share as my father's heir, about $200,000 after all the legal fees and victim compensation. I could have fought it, could have argued that the cabin was my mother's, purchased before Diane was in the picture. But the truth was, Mom would have wanted the victims to be made whole. She would have wanted justice, not just for herself, but for everyone Diane had hurt. So I let it go. With my share of the money, I started a foundation in my mother's name, the Sarah Morrison Foundation for Cancer Patients. We provide support services for families dealing with cancer, rides to appointments, help with medical paperwork, advocacy when dealing with insurance companies, companionship for patients who are isolated or alone, all the things Diane had prevented my mother from having. The foundation headquarters is in Boulder, in a small office I rent near the hospital where Mom spent her final days. On the wall, I hung a photo of the cabin, the only photo I had left of it. I visit that photo sometimes, remembering the summers I spent there with Mom, the hikes, the fishing, the quiet mornings on the porch. The cabin is gone now, sold to a young family from Denver. But the memories remain, and in a strange way, losing the cabin gave me something more important: purpose. 1 year after Diane's conviction, I got a letter from her. She was in a federal prison in California, serving her life sentence. Jake, I know you hate me. You have every right to. But I want you to know I didn't kill your mother. Not intentionally. I just didn't save her when I could have. Is that the same thing? Maybe. But it's the truth. Your father loved you. He talked about you constantly. I think part of why I grew to resent you was because you had his love so easily, while I had to work so hard to get even a fraction of his attention. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that not everything I did was calculated. Your father, I did care about him. In my own broken way. Diane, I read the letter once, then threw it away. I didn't owe her my time, my energy, or my forgiveness. She'd made her choices. She'd hurt people, killed people for money, and for some twisted sense of deserving better than what life had given her. Now she'd spend the rest of her life in a cage. That was justice enough. 2 years after the trial, I took a week off from the foundation and drove to Colorado. Not to the old cabin site. I'd heard the new owners had renovated it extensively, and I didn't want to intrude on their lives. Instead, I drove to a nearby trailhead and hiked up to a ridge that overlooked the valley where the cabin had been. It was May again. 2 years since that terrible weekend trapped in the storm with Diane and Frank. The mountains were green and alive. Snow still capped the highest peaks, but wildflowers were blooming in the meadows below. I sat on a rock and pulled out the letters Mom had written me, the ones I'd found in the lockbox. You're not alone, you have the cabin. She'd been wrong about that. I didn't have the cabin. Not anymore. But I understood what she'd really meant. I had the memories. I had the values she'd taught me. I had the love she'd given me. Those things couldn't be stolen or sold or taken away. I'm okay, Mom, I said out loud to the mountains and the sky. It took a while, but I'm okay. The wind rustled through the pine trees. Somewhere in the distance, a hawk cried. And I felt, for the first time since Mom died, something like peace. I stayed on that mountain for an hour, remembering, grieving, healing. Then I hiked back down to my truck and drove back to Boulder. Back to the foundation, back to the work, back to helping families navigate the same darkness my family had faced. The cabin was gone. My parents were gone. Diane was locked away forever. But I was still here, still fighting, still trying to make something good out of something terrible. And somehow, that felt like enough. This is Jake Morrison, reminding you that sometimes the people who seem most trustworthy are the most dangerous. The grieving widow might be a predator. The sad story might be a calculated manipulation. Trust your instincts, investigate suspicions, and when someone shows you who they really are, believe them. If this story moved you, please like and subscribe for more true stories about family betrayal and the long road to justice. Leave a comment. Have you ever discovered someone in your family wasn't who they claimed to be? How did you find out? What did you do? Remember, property can be replaced. People can't. My mother died because someone saw her as an obstacle to wealth. Don't let the people you love become victims. And sometimes, losing what you thought you wanted leads you to what you actually need.